If you listen to Tame Impala, you're going to start to notice something. The songs feel really complex and emotional, but the actual songwriting structure, pretty simple. That simplicity is exactly why they work so well, especially if you're trying to prompt or write music in a similar lane, right? Most Tame Impala songs start with mood, not vocals. The intro is usually instrumental, runs a little bit longer than a typical pop song. Maybe you throw in a drum loop, synth texture, some guitar pattern repeats, just really long enough to get you into the headspace before anything is explained to you through verses or lyrics, right? The goal at this point is not to hook you with words yet, but really to bring you into a feeling. Like, for example, Let It Happen. Now, if you know Let It Happen, the song's like 8 minutes long, right? If you're not looking at the music video. But about 30, 40 seconds of it are dedicated to before you even hear Kevin Parker say a single word. Uh, does a really good job of just floating you in the vibe before the story even starts. Now, when the verses come in, the energy slow, internal. The vocals are very calm. They're almost detached. Lyrically, I guess this is where you could say overthinking lives, right? The lines sound like the thoughts someone is having in real time rather than a story being told. There's very little drama here. It feels personal, unsure and reflective, like almost like you have a theme song kicking in while you're marinating on something, right? Now, a good example of this is like Eventually, where he's just really kind of quietly processing a breakup. I'm probably going to butcher the lyrics, but it's something along the lines of, I know I always said I could never hurt you, but this is the very, very last time I'm ever going to try. It's almost like you're just kind of sitting in his brain and you're really just eavesdropping on someone's inner monologue, right? And then from there, we kick into the pre chorus, which is very subtle, but it's important to move this whole thing along, right? This is really where tension builds. So you have chords that open up, the mic drums might change just a little bit, not too much, and the lyrics start pointing toward something emotional without fully saying it yet. It feels like really you're just holding your breath, admitting something out loud before you do that, right? Good example, yet again, the less I know, the better. It does a really good job of, the pre chorus lifting with the airy synth chord progressions and that, she said, it's not now or never, wait 10 years, we'll be together. You can just feel that, right? It's, really just a feeling. It's just like that jealousy kind of creeping in, but still restrained, right? And then we get to the chorus. The chorus is an emotional release, but not in a loud or aggressive way. Instead of explaining the situation, the chorus usually repeats one simple emotional truth. It's just like regret, acceptance, jealousy, uncertainty, whatever that may be, right? So, because of that, the lyrics are really short, repeatable. We're living in whatever that emotion is already, so it just kind of doubles down on it. You're really, at this point in the chorus, you're not here to learn new information. What you're doing is you're sitting in a feeling. Good example of that is like We Only Go Backwards, right? The entire chorus, it's only 4 lines. They just repeat. It feels like I only go backwards, baby. That's really it. And then you have the guitars and the harmony in the background. So it's almost like a wave of nostalgia and some bittersweet resignation. Then after the chorus, usually what happens with these songs, there's often an instrumental moment that acts like a hook, right? So maybe that's a synth line, a guitar riff, or a groove takes over and keeps the song moving without more words. Sometimes this part is just, it's as good as the chorus itself, right? So think about the bass groove and the less I know the better. Like take a look at it, listen to it right after the chorus is specifically what I'm talking about. That's usually the part of the song that people hum more than they sing the actual chorus, right? The second verse is usually adding a layer of depth rather than just like changing direction. So we didn't go from like A to B directly, we went from A to AV2, right? Or AV3, whatever. Here, the lyrics expand on the same idea. They're often, just more aware, maybe more resignation into what's happening, more just acceptance or giving into it. But on the music side, it's, a little bit fuller, but still restrained, right? Let's take a look at New Person, same mistakes, right? Same old mistakes. The second verse is really just about deepening the self doubt, right? Feel like a brand new person, but you make the same mistakes. So it's literally in the same lane, the same thing. It's just a little more like tired and honest, right? Like we're just kind of sinking into it now. So from there, the chorus kind of returns, and this time it hits a little bit harder, a little bit more emotional. Even if nothing major changes musically, more layers come in, and the repetition starts to feel really intentional. It's not just simple, right? It's not just like, hey, we're being lazy. It's an intentional repetition. And then from there, really most of these songs they include a moment near the end where everything really shifts. This could be a bridge, breakdown, some type of glitchy instrumental section, but lyrically, this is often the most honest part of the song, right? It represents a realization, acceptance, or letting go. Sometimes it's no words at all either, which I guess it just says as much, right? You can use an instrumental and I think it could speak louder than words at times. Now, songs usually end by drifting away instead of stopping cleanly. They fade, right? They loop, they stretch out. They kind of leave things almost, if you're listening to it, it feels really unresolved. And that's by design, right? The unfinished feeling is part of identity. So on Let It Happen, it literally just glitches and loops at the end, right? Like do 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 do. Same thing with like Lost in Yesterday. So it just kind of dissolves into almost like a reverb and an echo. Nothing is really wrapped up or tied up neatly. So one important thing to understand is that these songs are really not built around storytelling, right? They're built around states of mind. The verses ask questions, the choruses are there to really just kind of say a feeling or state a feeling, and then the bridge is like the truth, right? That's where it happens. So, as for like the genre, Tame Impala, I describe it as, really a psychedelic indie rock with pop structure. Some people call it indie pop. I'm more in that psychedelic lane for it, right? Especially more their early work. It leans more psychedelic and, rock driven, like the fuzzy guitars and Elephant, right? The later work, though, it's more like synth focused, really pop, kind of leaning with like polished grooves and, things like that, like on Currents and the Slow Rush. Um, at its core, though, it's just really in the indie world, but it uses familiar pop shapes to make experimental sounds accessible. So if you're trying to prompt music like this, right, I don't really think where you're gonna kind of win this is in the music style. I think a lot of it is going to have to be around the important things, right? The song structure, how you write these, how you build your truth and your bridges. So, you want to make something like this, I would highly recommend just spending some time studying, breaking down the roadmap of some of their different songs. They kind of really fall into three lanes inside of it in terms of like you'll know what I mean when you start looking at them, right? But before you start writing your prompt, you're giving it your BPMs and your music instruments that you want. If you really want to make music that sounds similar or in the same lane, it's important to understand that structure and to really create something that is yourself but follows the same pattern. Have a good one. Before we end this video, there's two things I want to do. First off, if you're not a member of the SunoMaxxing community, please click the link in the bio or the description of this video. It'll take you straight to our community. This is completely free of charge. It's something that I'm building right now where really I just want to take music enthusiasts, people who use the Suno platform, people who are just diehard about making music, especially using AI, and just give them a place to really network and learn from one another, right? Second thing I want to do is get you to send me your version of a Tame Impala song, right? Now, I'm not saying rip off Tame Impala, but using that same lane, I want to see what you come up with after experimenting with their song structure, prompting inside of Suno. Please feel free to leave your link in the comment. I'll take a look at all of these, do a follow up video in the future where we kind of break them down. And other than that, you have yourselves a great day.